All right, welcome to Block Party. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching. Hit our subscribe button, rate and review us. Hit me up on Mike Wahle68 on Twitter, Process to Perform on Instagram. Check out our Process to Perform page on YouTube. This is our preview show. Got the Vikings coming into town, into Lambeau Field. Packers are at a point in the season where we want to see some just good, solid football. You'd love to see a statement game out of the Packers this week where they bring everything together, offensive, defense, and certainly, special teams, which we don't spend too much time on this channel with special teams because but offense and defense, man, we want to let's get a complete game. This is a very good team, obviously a rivalry game. I remember when I was playing, this is the team that we always kind of knew were our main rivals, particularly, after my rookie years when they brought in Randy Moss and dropped 3 on Monday Night Football. And then I think our next draft, our top 3 guys were DBs to try to stop them. And we obviously traded Fred Vincent for Amon, so that worked out well. But Chi-Town Mike, 3rd round draft pick, Mike McKenzie, ended up being a great, Packers cornerback for years and years and years. But this is a fun football game. This is a good football team. They're well coached. Kevin O'Connell is one of the best offensive minds in the game. Seems to be a real leader. We're going to get to the tape, but just broadly, offensively, listen, they've got talent at the skill positions. You're talking Jordan Addison, you're talking Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, Aaron Jones averaging 4.9 yards a carry right now. And they run a lot of under center stuff, trying to make it easy for this young quarterback, JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy, look, you're in a difficult situation when you get rid of a guy like Sam Darnold, who played as well as he did last year, who played as well as he is playing this year against the Rams, notwithstanding last week. But there's obviously a lot of pressure on this young player to deliver, and you'll see it on the tape. Like sometimes the feet and the hands, it just doesn't line up, and he just misses throws. Now, when he drives the ball, the kid's got an arm. He's certainly got the moxie for it, and they're trying to run this under center stuff. One, because I think it's what they're built for, but 2, running under center play action pass lets you run deeper routes, cleans up the look for the quarterback. And if you've got an offensive line that can protect, which they've done a pretty good job of doing for the most part, it really is, in my opinion, the best way to play football. It gives you a lot of options out of the running game. It balances the defense for the most part. And gives the receivers opportunities to run these deeper routes where they can run away from defenders. So, like, these guys are averaging 21.8 points per game. That's good for 22nd in the league. They average just over 100 yards rushing a game. They're not fluid. They're not efficient. And I think the worst thing they got going for them, the best thing for the Packers, is they're 31st in turnover margin. They're just not doing a great job of holding on to the football and picking up a lot of turnovers on the other side. So the defense, the one thing I'll say about this Vikings defense, and they're missing Jonathan Grenard, who was kind of an even swap for Daniil Hunter last season when he went to the Texans, but he was a hell of a good football player last year, and unfortunately he's injured. I'm a big fan of that guy. That's a guy that I was working with some guys on the Texans, so I got to see that guy every single day in practice, just trying to get better. Like divert the story a little bit, but when you're in the National Football League, you'll see guys that are out there, getting through practice, and then you'll see guys out there and you just know they're going to be good. And Jonathan Grenard was one of those guys I watched every day. I was like, oh, he's gonna be good. He's gonna get it, because the guy worked his ass off every single practice, just trying to give it to some of the the better tackles in the league. Their defense is giving up 23 points a game. That's about mid in the league, about 16th in the league. They're 127 yards a game on the ground, giving up just over four yards a carry. They're really good in red zone scoring. They're number 4 in the league at 48.39%. That means that less than half the time teams that get in the red zone are scoring touchdowns. I love their defensive line. They brought in Javon Kinlaw. They brought in Jonathan Allen. They brought in this kid, Jalen Redmond, who I honestly never heard before. 61 to see him on tape. Man, he jumps off the tape. He played his ass off last week. Now, it could have been a one-time thing. I'm not going to go back and watch the entirety of the Minnesota Vikings defensive tape, but the guy is playing really well. Van Ginkel's on the side. He's a guy that came over from Miami. He always makes plays. Very obviously very comfortable in his defense, having the same D coordinator as he did head coach in Miami. And then Dallas Turner is kind of playing in for. I think he was a top draft pick 2 years ago. He is filling in for Grenard. Plays hard. I think he's better in the run game than in the past, even though he's kind of an undersized guy. He probably was drafted as a pass rusher. But these guys are fun to watch. They do a lot of different stuff. Obviously, Harrison Smith on the back end going into his like 13th or 14th season is still playing at a high level. They bring a lot of guys up at the line of scrimmage. They want to show you a bunch of different looks, try to confuse your offense. There are just tons of space if you can hold off that pass rush. There's tons of action in the screen game. There's tons of action in the quarterback scramble. There's tons of action in the deeper routes. You just have to be able to hold off the pressure and identify what's going on. Let's get to the tape. We'll do a little wrap up at the end here.
Dallas Turner's taking the place of Jonathan Grenard. He is, as far as pass rushing goes, he is, how would I put this? He's a one-trick pony. He's going to get upfield and do an inside stab. He's going to try to collapse the pocket. I watched three, I'm doing some homework for some other stuff. I watched three tapes on this guy. I didn't really see any pass rush moves aside from that. So one thing they do is they get upfield, they penetrate, they do a lot of stunting up front. Obviously, this defense, when I just talk about the Minnesota defense in general, one thing that is always kind of standing out to me is the understanding that I just don't think they're as good away from Minnesota as they are in Minnesota. One thing you'd see when you watch this tape, I start pulling up different clips of things you can look at, and you'll notice that the Bears spent a lot of time behind the sticks in this game. There's third and longs, second and longs, all over the board here. And so some of these coverages might be a little bit soft, but you just have to understand these guys were really good in the run game early. And because of that, they got the Bears maybe the Bears had them right where they want them. And sometimes when you think about the Packers and, maybe being more comfortable in 3rd and 8 than 3rd and 2, maybe this is actually a net good thing for us. First thing you see here is just deep coverage. One thing I bring this up always as nothing matters if you can get north and south and break tackles. And I'll show this play from the end zone because this is one of the epic cluster Fs from, I think, their safety and their linebacker here trying to tackle. One thing I want you guys to notice, and you can't see him, he's not on the screen yet. Come on, Mike. Is right here, a lot of teams are splitting this tight end out, and they're hoping they can show that they're going to chip, or if they're not going to chip and they're actually going to stay in, or they're going to just release, they want to give that impression. But now you see that Dallas Turner's lining up all the way outside. So think about just from this tackle's perspective, if he just kicks and waits, and by the time he gets all the way around, the ball's gone, man. So always innovating. And both teams are doing this. You'll see it. So they'll chip there, no problem. So he ends up getting the release, and this is like our old Tucker Kraft move. Watch that again, man. That's a fun miss right there. That is a fun miss. That's Harrison Smith, who doesn't, he isn't really known for missing tackles, but this is amazing. Hey. There's a lot of that on the tape here. So we got 1st and 10. Little bunch look by the Bears. You see everybody up at the line of scrimmage trying to give them a different looks. Got a 2-shell, really because they're so tight formation here. I think this is 12 personnel, but they're in such a tight formation. Yeah, they're in 12 personnel, but they're in such a tight formation that the corners even up top, are really near the line of scrimmage, and then they've got obviously their 2 deep safeties. So they're going to be able to, and they stay in nickel on a lot of this stuff. They'll match. I would imagine they match R12 with nickel. We talked about that last week. One thing you saw over this game is there's 2 things really. The Bears offense, as far as just we talked about wrinkles last week and just putting in wrinkles in how you're going to run, certain kinds of routes so that you're not kind of telegraphing your plays by formation or release. It's something Ben Johnson's really good at, and Caleb Williams just makes a lot of tight window throws. And you just see this one here. They're just running just kind of a little stutter bank and then just back in and then just stay away from this guy We got the cover 2 look on this side, so he's thinking outside leverage. So they've got this space in the middle. They don't want to throw it over their middle linebacker. I think that might be Cashman. But there's a lot of these like tight window throws that one thing that I'm always watching now, you're looking at the pass rush. So you do under center play action pass. You get everything you want, I think, from a protection standpoint. There's extra backs in the backfield to help chip out on the left tackle. I think the tight end chipped out on his release. I think he's doing a little shallow cross here. But the big thing is you see feet set, and you see a little bit of a pocket, and then you see them throwing on time. So he's got this throw here if he wants it. They're waiting on this. That's the number 1 read for him. And it's just plant and throw, sling it. And again, you can see how close Cashman gets to making that play. But there's a lot of throws like that in this game, so the windows are pretty tight. But having said that, a lot of success. 3rd and 13. And so they're probably playing some sort of defense where they're going to be expecting something around the sticks. You see they really got 5 deep to start the snap here. You don't see this very often where there's like a 5-man umbrella. Even with that, they've got 5 up the line of scrimmage. They end up bringing 5. So they bring off the slot. And for whatever reason, this is always interesting with defenses. Maybe it's just because of down and distance, but usually you see him cover this a little bit faster. When they're bringing that slot pressure, they don't. They chip out with that tight end. And now they kind of got everything they want here, end up getting the first down. And so with the Minnesota defense, knowing that they bring pressure, they're at home right now, so they feel a lot better about bringing pressure, I'm sure, because of the crowd noise than they will at Lambeau. But if they do bring pressure, you see how soft they're playing on the back end. Like, these are the things from a game plan standpoint. You're like, all right, you got all this here, and then you don't have anything going on, for 10 yards. You got to feel really good about that when you think about the Packers and the screen game in particular. And you saw it pop up on this tape, whether it's this little this is like a inside slot slip screen, or they have some screen to the running backs. They're putting people in positions where they got to run up and make these tackles. They motion out here at the running back position, so we got to have some honesty. And anytime you're this far back, like this, let's just say they throw the hitch to DJ Moore. I think that's DJ Moore. If they throw the hitch, like that isn't an easy play for any cornerback in the league to just make an open field tackle with 10 yards of run space. But they end up just getting north and south, and cannot end up making this play in time. These are the kind of plays they're going to work. 2nd and 15. Again, behind the sticks a lot as you go through the tape. A lot of success on 1st down or 2nd down, kind of getting these guys in passing situations. Another, I would just say, not necessarily a new route, but you just watch how he plays this out. It's kind of a bend and then really hard bend back in to get underneath the safety, and you got to make these really tight window throws. You see the pressure by Minnesota, and if we are expecting pressure from Minnesota, which I think is fair, and they were just running a little cross dog here, really at the linebacker level. So cross dog 1, and then bring this around, and they can run any kind of extra stunts if they want to with their 4 or 5 down line here. If they want to run TEs, ETs, etc. But you're bringing too many. Again, they're playing this really deep coverage, particularly at the safety level, where you're 13 yards off, heels in the ground. And he's just making these tight anticipation throws. And I think this is a big – I'm just bringing this up to template this with what we talked about with Jordan Love last week and really every week, is when feet are set and you can just let her rip. Man, some of this stuff is just, really, really good. I really like watching pressures and how teams are thinking about pressure and how, offensive lines and the running backs and the, what the answers are. One of the best answers in pressure is always a screen. And you always like, me personally, I always like when you start the running back and make him go across the football. Because if this guy's tracking him, it's easier to find on the backside. And if it's zone, he kind of disappears. In other words, if he was over here, they have to make checks because you got 4 to a side. But when he's on that backside and he ends up coming across and getting the ball, you kind of lose him. If he's man, you just pick up 51, no problem. If they bring this pressure, though, and everybody's kind of given a little space, or maybe this outside guy's playing the flat, obviously 3rd and 19 is a different beast altogether. But you see how wide-ass open this ends up. And I don't think they make this – I think they end up, getting a 4th down. But these are the plays in the National Football League now as I go back. And you land and you get tackled here, on the 42, 43-yard line. You're probably 3rd or 4th and 2. How many teams – because this is a 4-down league now, once you cross, maybe the 45 going out. Because this is a 4-down league, all of these plays are, I guess, the way that we're thinking about defense, and it'll be interesting to see if there's an adjustment here from Minnesota, is if you're playing like sticks defense these days. I don't know. I can't get exactly where the first down marker is here, but if you're playing like around the 6 and just saying, hey, we're just going to prevent them from getting that first, you might have to consider start moving it up here, because that 4th and 2 is we're going for it, like 95% of the time, it feels like, in the National Football League. Who ends up making the play here, by the way? And this is one thing that you're going to see with this defense is just the effort. That 51 comes off of his, or so that is that Van Ginkel, excuse me. Van Ginkel's running off of the right tackle and comes all the way back to make this play. That's a hell of an effort, man. Got to finish blocks here if you want to have success against this football team. Let's look at just from a pressure standpoint, things we got to deal with. And they do this a lot in the run and the pass game. And you're just going to see, they're just going to run like a T with that linebacker coming around, pressure here. And what does that do? It creates the illusion of a lane for Caleb Williams if they were just running a drop back, where when you got this coming out, you're going, okay, I can exit here, but you got this back coming around, or linebacker coming around making here. A lot of teams are doing this just with like an end crash or a tackle crash, and they'll just keep the linebacker here, and he's just kind of wrapping, but he's almost spying. But they want that initial move by that quarterback into a designated rush lane. And so this is what we call, when we talk about having a pass rush plan, it's like, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, we're trying to dictate where that quarterback can release if he wants to run. Not relevant here necessarily just because they're running the screen, but you get the point. 1st and 10 look. They go under center. This is 12 personnel. They put their tight end as a fullback in the backfield. This kind of stuff will be open. Always putting this player in conflict. Here as they're showing a block, then he's going to release late. That kind of gets your eyes off of the tight end initially because he's in. And then obviously Van Ginkel is, a guy who's going for sacks. So he's going to end up rushing the passer, not staying on here. He's got the contain. And then you got these opportunities again where you get, 2nd and short. Maybe that's potentially 1st down. 1st and 10. They shift into under center. And that really compresses the defense. You'll see it again. They've got one safety back here. I think that's Harrison Smith. And then everybody's within 5 yards. And so you just start thinking about, got all this space, to play with. End up in a slot. Again, another under center look. And they end up getting home this time. you're going to get some opportunities to win some 1v1 matchups. See, they're funneling this back inside here at the slot position. So when he takes that out, we've got great leverage. He's from maybe going out and up. Nothing open. So there's a lot of weapons on the pass rush. I don't think they're as good away from Minnesota. But you're going to see they can still get up the field. These guys are, penetrating players. You watch Jonathan Allen here, 93 against is that Tooney, I think. Who's this is a good matchup right here. That's good on good. Got a little double swipe. And then he just goes for this chop and then club. You don't see the club. That's old Reggie Club. Not quite Reggie, though. Dallas Turner, I think, ends up making a hustle sack here. But, if you're Rasheed Walker and you're watching this tape, this is what you're going to get at that left tackle. He's just stab, 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 stab. Now, when you run a 3-4 defense, a lot of times you want to keep your linebackers in. You'll stay in base because you don't mind playing in base because you really like those pass rushers on the end. You feel like, whether it's Dallas Turner, Van Ginkel, maybe Van Ginkel more so than Dallas Turner, that you don't mind kind of putting him in a little bit of space. So he's just off the line here on the opposite side outside of Dallas Turner. And they put their linebacker up on the line of scrimmage over here over DJ Moore. But you just see the penetration that happens here at the line of scrimmage. Dallas Turner does a great job of attacking the left tackle. And whether it's the toss, whether it's the outside zone, if you can't win here initially, or if you can't stalemate there initially, these plays just don't go. And I think in this game in particular, I haven't watched all of Minnesota's tapes, but they did a really good job at the point of attack of creating a new line of scrimmage. Another 1st and 10 look. It's got a trip side with the tight end offset. Bring it back in. Again, 12 personnel. They feel good about that. And you just see 61, who, I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know who he was until I watched this tape. And obviously another guy coming over from San Francisco with Kinlaw really had a really, really good game. Showed up all over this tape. I'll show this from the end zone. And you see, Minnesota's kind of plan of attack here is they're starting a 2-high shell. We know that Harrison Smith loves to play, around the line of scrimmage. He's going to fill this really fast. If we get past, the line of scrimmage, obviously. But I'll show you this from the end zone. And there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of movement with the Minnesota Vikings interior 3. And I think that makes this difficult. Now, can I read this? Wow, that's a hell of a box, Mike. Can I read this stance and think maybe there's something going on? Can I read these square stances and think, are we square because we're true 2 gappers, or are we square because we're trying to move into a different gap? I think you can see the answer here. Inside foot back. It means his first step's coming with his right. Any kind of overstep here and you're going to be in trouble. Got to be real aware of that tight footwork at the offensive line position. Got to have it worse to stalemate there. 1st and 15. See 61 showing up again. Again, kind of showing that too high. But they are quick to trigger. Staying in base personnel here. Be interesting to see again what they do. They like base personnel. This might be something they're comfortable with the Packers passing game. But look at this, the speed. And, this is just something that you like to start studying a little bit more and more. is this a more severe stance? And does that tell you that he's going to make a move inside? Is there a call that you need for that, et cetera, et cetera? Right? These are the kind of things we study at the offensive line position. But he just makes a hell of a play there. .55 does a great job of blunting this right tackle. Same foot, same shoulder. Keeping his outside arm free. Obviously, Van Ginkel out there holding the edge. Van Ginkel's a player that, if you're thinking about running with your tight ends blocking, I think they're edge players. I think Van Ginkel's a guy that you feel like you can probably just cover up. He's going to do his job, but he's not going to do, I think in the run game, not necessarily that much more. Tight down at the bottom of the screen here. Another tight end offset. Is that for a chip? Yeah. They're just trying to make Dallas Turner kind of aware. End up getting a sack here. Really just playing cover 3. One thing that we talked about with the Packers defense is you see the depth that they're getting here, and they're just going to drive on this crosser. Now, part of that's just down in distance, obviously. Also having some contact here, but, this route isn't necessarily as open as maybe we saw with Green Bay last week just because of the position here. Reset. But this route here isn't necessarily as open as we saw last week against the Giants with the Green Bay Packers because we're driving on this early and leaving this window open. Something I think the Vikings are doing a good job of here. Now, maybe it's a different philosophy as far as how they want to play that. We just see from a pass rush now, they're just going to bring 4. This is their true nickel look. They're spying Caleb Williams and Cashman here at 51, trying to keep that center occupied. .61 showing up again. Double swipe rip. Look at a great double swipe rip here. Van Ginkel ends up making the sack. And a lot of this, I'll say it again, I really do think a lot of this is just, being in Minnesota is a little bit different with the snap count. Okay, to start with the Minnesota Vikings, I think the name of the game is going to start with J.J. McCarthy. And everyone's talking about him this week. The accuracy wasn't there last week. Might have cost him the football game in some aspects. The reality is they've got Justin Jefferson, they got Jordan Addison, they have T.J. Hawkinson. They've got some dudes at those key positions that can get open and make plays. Whether you're in man, whether you're in zone, they know how to read. They think fast on their feet. Great route runners, great hands. So they have weapons. It's a question of getting him off a spot, making him kind of heat up in the pocket, which means you got hot feet. You're just trying to get rid of the football. Creating looks, whether it's bringing all these guys up at the line of scrimmage like the Chicago Bears did and just making him, think too much or just, speed up that process. Obviously being a young quarterback in this league, you've still got a lot to learn. So we'll see how the Packers and Jeff Hafley's defense decides to attack that. But if you're just talking, can these guys get open? You look at this little route up top, little stick, and an in, yards after catch. I mean, they can do this all day as well as anybody in the league. I think both tackles are playing well. I've said for years, I think O'Neal, we're going to beat O'Neal, and then I'm wrong. So I'm not going to say it this year. He continues to outperform my assessment. Christian Darrisaw is a really good left tackle over on the other side. They brought in some guys to fortify that offensive line in the interior. They've got a rookie, actually, first-round draft pick at the left guard position. Really good mover. But you always feel good about having kind of rookie on the offensive line when you're thinking about pressures and communication in particular, and not necessarily just the execution of the play, but all the stuff that goes into the combination blocks and the communication at the line of scrimmage, particularly if you're going to play at Lambeau. And we know how loud Lambeau is now with the stadium additions. I know that's not new news to anybody else but me. But when I went up there for the Detroit game, man, I was just blown away at how loud it was. So let's watch Hawkinson. We start kind of first by just identifying, acknowledging that a lot of teams are doing this to give this guy something to think about. It's creating some different angles. He's going to run like a Texas route here, I think. Out and back in. And because they do a good job at the quarterback position of just planting your feet, getting rid of the ball, hitting him in time. You can make a lot of football plays here with those three guys I mentioned at the receiver and tight end position. Obviously, Aaron Jones in the backfield. Can't say enough about how good he is, and I'll show a couple, I think, kind of zone plays and things that he can do that are, you just miss him. He's a great locker room guy, fantastic football player. All right, little under center here. And that's a tight throw against man coverage. The Bears are just saying, and this was kind of the name of the game for both sides early in the count. Let's get everybody up at the line of scrimmage. Let's force this guy to win the football game with his arm. We got plenty of time. Makes a good throw. If it's in this guy's range, man, he's making the play. Okay, so we got a little bunch look with a tight end offset here. And we're just going to run weak zone to the open side. So you got to be even there. But these plays, these zone plays, especially when you got this guard bubble or this 2-eye, it really comes down to, can you move this guy? Can you get a surge off the spot to make this guy's job difficult? Obviously on the backside where a lot of these plays end up, if you have a tackle or a guard tackle combo, can make that guy disappear, move him off the spot. And again, you're putting these linebackers in conflict. It's a really tough job. And then obviously, I think Jefferson is going to probably come down and try to crack here on the safety. Leave that corner to stay wide. Yep. But it's the surge that wins. And, sometimes we're talking about, the Packers and what you got to get to. You just see the surge here from the center and the right guard. Knocking 97 off the ball. And when you have that kind of play on a zone, you just feel really good about your chances. Try to watch this from the end zone. They're just running a 2-eye. Now, this is always the question, when you're in like 11 personnel. Obviously, by placement here, you're going like, well, who's got this? Well, it's the safety, but they're just going to, as long as he's back, they're not going to put him in the count. And that really helps, honestly, if you got a receiver you think you can crack, this really helps. This really helps the right guard in the center because they can hang on this block for longer, and it puts this guy in conflict. Do I go underneath? Am I have to hold? If I play over the top, is it going to be too flat? But if you get this guy moved off the line, if you create a new line of scrimmage, man, running back's looking at his chops. Okay, so we got a 1st and 10 look here with the 2x2. Hawkinson's just, again, slightly off to maybe chip through or give body presence to the rusher up here. And this is, this isn't new, just something that everybody's doing. This is kind of what I talk about, not this play in particular, but when you start talking about adding, in some situations wanting to add a jumbo tight end, it's like all of your guys are chipping out in one way or another now at some point in the game. So I just don't know what you lose. But let's watch up top here. They go motion across with Addison. And I think that's Justin Jefferson now in the slot. So when you've got a guy like this who's got to look through here, and then you just keep this wide, really, really tough play for that corner who really should expand this. But you've got a premier guy at that position. You don't want to give up anything. What ends up happening, McCarthy just puts his feet in the ground and just rips this ball back to the end zone. I mean, that's a hell of a throw. They do a good job with the 4-man rush. That rookie left guard does a nice job. Is that Grady Jackson? Over from Atlanta. The defensive tackle, I think he does a nice job there. I mean, that's a hell of a good throw. Grady Jackson's our guy. You see the Bears starting at 2 and they rotate down, come back, kind of in no man's land here. Got the look that they wanted now. So the quarterback can read it. And this is Aaron Jones doing Aaron Jones things. I'll show this from the back here, and we talked about it. We'll go through the motion here first. So Addison's here, and he's back. They've declared what they're going to do. Feel good about the run now. And you just have to, and this has been one of the problems with Green Bay, you got to secure this block. And then you got to get something here. Now, he gets beat, but Aaron Jones is, and we've seen this a million times, kind of stops and cuts this thing back. And this is the problem. You see the Hawkinson coming back and doing really a double cut here. I don't know how much longer this play is going to be in the game where you're allowed to just throw on this guy, because it just feels like they talk about it every year. Somebody ends up, one of the defensive ends gets hurt. Personally, I grew up playing football this way, so if you're chasing the football, everything's kind of free game, but rules change. He ends up getting 2 there. And then great run, great cut by a guy who's continuing to do it at a high level. 1st and 10 under center. I love this style of offense. We've talked about it at length here. What I think the problems it gives a defense, it forces them to declare early. You see they're in a single safety look right now. Looking to stop that run. Getting that backside safe, or getting that middle safety deep. Giving these receivers a ton of respect. And they're running this, kind of a Yankee concept where you're really trying to occupy that corner, but you want to bring this guy across for the deep over. And this is one of the favorite plays they've had historically against the Packers, trying to run away from that backside corner. You can just see the wrinkle as opposed to running straight up field. Taking this receiver and really occupying his eyes by going through here. So as we come across, like 26 is already committed. Good pocket. He's got time to throw, just doesn't make the throw. And so, this is one of those games, you're in the National Football League, and that some of these plays he's going to hit. It's not going to always be that way. He's not always going to miss these throws, and so we got to be really aware with our eyes. But he is struggling, and when you got a struggling quarterback, you take advantage. 1st and 10, bunch look on the bottom. Tight end offset again. Doesn't look like he can go back. Addison across. They just run this toss play. And this is how you stop these plays. At the point of attack. You see Darius out. Darisaw. He's got this real funky stance. It's like it looks like his torso is like a lot longer than his legs. I'm not sure. But because of this stance, he's going to false step. And then you enter it in. This is a thing that we used to talk about with my guys, is like, if you enter into these because of your first step and you're going sideways, like, you never have a chance to get upfield and get this backer if he shoots. You're not really helping this tight end because this tight end's trying to kind of reach and you're pushing against him. So it's like, you might widen, but you're never going to get to the second level. Makes it really tough. This is where you want Quay, you want Coop. Come on, Mike. This is where you want Quay, you want Coop to be really decisive when they see this toss and they see his chest go to the sideline. It's like, man, just go. Just go. Another 1st and 10 under center. 11 personnel. How are we going to play it? They stay with it too high. Daring you to run the football. 7 in the box. They just motion down their receiver just to get in the action here. Does a decent job, actually, on 35. The running game, we talk about the running game a lot. The last couple, as you run to set up the pass, what the philosophy is on that. If you've seen the other shows, you know what my thoughts on that are. But this isn't an efficient football play, but it's a positive football play. It keeps the defense honest. And this is the run game. Like, it's a scrum, and then eventually you bust one for 12 yards, for 20 yards, whatever. But there's just going to be a lot of this. And, when you got a back like Aaron Jones, as we know, these splits are interesting, by the way. Like, you're not, if you were trying to create run lanes, that's not a way to do it. That's for sure. The inability here to create movement because of, second steps coming over, you're kind of avoiding them to get up the linebacker. When that happens and this guy just kind of gets pushed sideways, these plays are really, really tough because you got to naturally look for the cutback now, and then you've got all this pursuit coming, and it's just hard. It's just hard. That's why that point of attack block, even though sometimes they cut off that backside block, that point of attack right now just kind of leaves you going, don't feel good about play side anymore.
Okay, so as you can see, they do a fantastic job defensively on first and second down, getting you behind the sticks. And it's almost like, you look at the Chicago Bears tape and you go, that's kind of how we feel in Green Bay. Do we feel better about 3rd and 8 than we do at 3rd and 2? Because at 3rd and 8, we know we have to throw the football, and that's kind of what the expectation is right now for everybody. It's like, let's try to get that ball down the field a little bit more. Let's try to create more opportunities in the passing game. We think we're better in that, at least more efficient in that. I don't know if the numbers back that up, but the general consensus is, hey, we've got this quarterback we just paid $55 million to. Let him push it down the field. Let's let him win or lose the football game for us, because that's what we did for the last 25 years with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. Let's give this guy the same opportunity. Talking about Jordan Love, let's give him the same opportunity we gave those players. Now, whether that's just like, we were a run-first team back in the early 2000s with Brett. You're a run-first team because you have Amon Green, you have our offensive line, you have our bacon package, but you do also have Donald, Fergie, Javon Walker, Antonio Freeman when I first got there, Bubba. I mean, you've got all these weapons in the passing game too. So it's always this. We always kind of recall things how we want to, but I think the bottom line is, when the game was on the line, or maybe even when we thought we were getting to that point, you could always feel like, all right, Brett, you're just going to start ripping this thing. Aaron, you're going to start ripping this thing. And the time is coming, I think, within that locker room, within those meeting rooms, within the coaching staff meetings. Hey, man, maybe we need to give this guy a little more leeway, a little more leash, and put some plays in where he can really demonstrate what a great quarterback he is becoming. So I think this is going to be a super interesting football game. Obviously, I've talked about it on here, the difference in playing in Minnesota versus playing in Lambeau for the home team is huge. I think both places now are extreme home field advantages, like tangible, put points on the board because you're home versus being at the other place. So I think that's a little bit of a swing just from a point standpoint, regardless what you bring as a crowd versus their offensive snap count is very, very difficult. It gives our defense a huge advantage. I think that's going to be one of the important factors of this game. Guys, thanks for watching this. Hit me up with comments, questions after the show, or certainly after the game. We'll try to get to them in the recap next week. Until then, enjoy the weekend, guys. I love football.